भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 8, text number 25. Dhumaha ratrihi tatha krishnaha. Dhumo ratris tatha krishnaha. Satmasaha dakshina ayanam. Sanmasa dakshinayanam. Tatra chandramasam jyotihi. Tatra chandramasam jyotir. Yogi prapya nivartate. Yogi prapya nivartate. Dhumo ratris tatha krishnaha. Sanmasa dakshinayanam. Tatra chandramasam jyotir. Yogi prapya nivartate. Dhumo ratris tatha krishnaha. Sanmasa dakshinayanam. Tatra chandramasam jyotir. Yogi prapya nivartate. Dhumo ratris tatha krishnaha. Sanmasa dakshinayanam. Tatra chandramasam jyotir. Yogi prapya nivartate.
Dhumo ratris tatha Krishna.
Dhumo ratris tatha krishnaha.
Sanmasa dakshinayanam.
Sanmasa dakshinayanam.
Tatra chandramasam jyotir.
Tatra chandramasam jyotir.
Yogi prapya nivartate.
Yogi prapya nivartate. Dhuma ratris tatha Krishnaha.
Dhumo ratris tatha krishnaha.
Sanmasa dakshinayanam.
Sanmasa dakshinayanam.
Tatra chandramasam jyotir.
Tatra chandramasam jyotir.
Yogi prapya nivartate.
Yogi prapya nivartate.
Dhumo ratris tatha Krishna.
Dhumo ratris tatha krishna.
Sanmasa dakshinayanam.
Sanmasa dakshinayanam.
Tatra chandramasam jyotir.
Tatra chandramasam jyotir.
Yogi prapya nivartate.
Yogi prapya nivartate.
Dhumo ratris tatha Krishnaha.
Dhumo ratris tatha krishnaha.
Shanmasa dakshinayanam.
Sanmasa dakshinayanam.
Tatra chandramasam jyotir.
Tatra chandramasam jyotir.
Yogi prapya nivartate.
Yogi prapya nivartate.
Dhumo ratris tatha Krishnaha.
Dhumo ratris tatha krishnaha.
Sanmasa dakshinayanam.
Sanmasa dakshinayanam.
Tatra chandramasam jyotir.
Tatra chandramasam jyotir.
Yogi prapya nivartate.
Yogi prapya nivartate.
धूमो रात्रिस् तथा कृष्णः
Dhumo ratris tatha krishnaha.
सन्मासा दक्षिणायनम्
Sanmasa dakshinayanam.
तत्र चान्द्रं सम्मर्ज्योतिर्
Tatra chandramasam jyotir.
योगी प्राप्य निवर्तते
Yogi prapya nivartate.
धूमो रात्रिस्तथा कृष्णः
धूमो रात्रिस्तथा कृष्णः
षण्मासा दक्षिणायनम्
षण्मासा दक्षिणायनम्
तत्र चान्द्रमसं
तत्र चान्द्रमसं ज्योतिर्
योगी प्राप्य निवर्तते
योगी प्राप्य धूमो रात्रिस्तथा कृष्णः षण्मासा दक्षिणायनम् तत्र चान्द्रमसं ज्योतिर् योगी प्राप्य निवर्तते धूमो रात्रिस्तथा कृष्णः षण्मासा दक्षिणायनम् तत्र चान्द्रमसं ज्योतिर् योगी प्राप्य निवर्तते Synonyms: धूमः
धूमः
smoke,
smoke,
रात्रिः
रात्रिः
night,
night,
तथा
तथा
also,
also
कृष्णः
Krishnaः
the fortnight of the dark moon,
the fortnight of the dark moon,
Satmasah
Satmasah
the 6 months,
the 6 months,
Dakshina Ayanam
Dakshina Ayanam
when the sun passes on the southern side,
when the sun passes on the southern side,
Tatra
Tatra
there,
there,
Chandramasam
Chandramasam
the moon planet,
the moon planet,
Jyotihi
Jyotihi
the light,
the light,
Yogi
Yogi
the mystic,
the mystic,
Prapya
Prapya
achieving,
achieving,
Nivartate
Nivartate
comes back.
comes back.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Translation: the mystic who passes away from this world during the smoke, the night, the moonlight fortnight, or in the 6 months when the sun passes to the south, or who reaches the moon planet, again comes back. Translation with repetition: the mystic who passes away from this world
Mystic who passes away from this world
during the smoke,
during the smoke,
the night,
the night,
the moonlight fortnight,
the moonlight fortnight,
or in the 6 months
or in the 6 months,
when the sun passes to the south,
when the sun passes to the south,
or who reaches the moon planet,
or who reaches the moon planet,
again comes back.
again comes back.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we are informed that those who are expert in fruitive activities and sacrificial methods on earth attend to the moon at death. These elevated souls live on the moon for about 10,000 years by demigod calculations and enjoy life by drinking somarasa. They eventually return to earth. This means that on the moon there are higher classes of living beings, though they may not be perceived by the gross senses. Thus ends the wonderful transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So I'm taking Bhagavad Gita class maybe after 4 months or something. Last I was seeing I took somewhere in 2022 in October or something. So it's been some time, but it's a wonderful chapter. And anybody knows what is the title of this chapter? Not the title of today's class, title of this chapter. Attaining the Supreme. Very nice. So, Krishna, this is the middle portion of Bhagavad Gita, the middle 6 chapters, where Krishna is sharing something which is very confidential, especially the Bhakti Yoga. The previous chapter was knowledge of the Absolute, and now he is talking about attaining the Supreme. Now, imagine all of us, we came from India to here, right? Had it been, you're a lawyer, you'll know it better, but imagine if somebody tries to come to US or UK. It's not easy, right? Because this is considered to be most prosperous. But if somebody has to go to Africa, a country in Africa, let's say Ghana or Nigeria, things like that, it will not be so difficult. You can easily get a visa for that. But you have to achieve the Supreme. If you have to go to the Supreme planet, attaining the Supreme, it's not going to be easy. That is why Krishna is telling there are so many caveats, there are so many conditions that we should be aware of, and one of them is thinking about which problem again? So this verse, Krishna is saying that very interesting verse which says Dhumo Ratris Tatha Krishnaha Sanmasa Dakshinayanam Tatra Chandramasam Jyotir Yogi Prapya Nivartate. There are things which are mentioned here. If somebody passes his body in those circumstances, Dhumo is smoke, Ratrihi is night, if somebody passes his body in the night, Krishnaha in the fortnight of the dark moon, where Sukla Paksha and Krishna Paksha we say. So in Krishna Paksha, if somebody is passing his body, Dakshinayanam, when the sun is moving towards the south, then in that case, what will happen? The night, the moonlight fortnight, or in the 6 months when the sun passes to the south, or who reaches the moon planet again comes back. Yogi Prapya Nivartate. It's a very scary thing because after all, you do all this devotional service and somebody says at the end of this that, by chance, if you pass your body like this, then you have to come back. It's not a very assuring thing. So, what is it that Prabhupada is trying to say? Krishna is telling Arjuna. Why is he saying all these things? Actually, it's a very interesting chapter. If some other time, if time permits, we can get an overview of why this portion has come. I don't want to go into that today, but I will talk about it in some other time, where Arjuna begins this chapter with asking certain questions. What is Adi Daiva? What is Adi Yajna? What is Adi Bhuta? What is Karma? What is Prayana Kale? These are the words which he heard from Krishna in the end of 7th chapter, and he's asking them. Sometimes when we are asked these questions, we don't know them properly, or we avoid them. 8th chapter, usually we talk about yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajate ante kalevaram tam tam eveti konte sadatad bhava bhavita or anta kale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram yah prayati samad bhavam yati nasti atra samshaya or tasmad sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara yuddhe cha mai arpita manobuddhir mam evaishyasi satyam te. So these kind of verses we remember and we quote, which are very good for preaching. But we don't realize why these verses are spoken by Krishna. And it's a very important thing to know. Prabhupada explains this in the first 2 verses where Krishna begins to answer these questions of Arjuna. He explains what are these terms. They may appear very simple, but they are not so simple unless you are very clear about them. But that's not what I'm going to talk today, but some other time, and I'll it is so enlightening, it is so assuring to know these things, and hence Krishna is telling yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam has a purpose, has a reason why Krishna has brought that verse. We will see that in some other time, but today what we are going to do is, we will see this, this is the roadmap that we have for today. We will see that, Prabhupada is mentioning, in Srimad Bhagavatam this is mentioned. So which verse is Srila Prabhupada referring to? The second thing that we will see is who gets elevated to moon planet. Third thing we will see is who's a materialistic person. And fourth thing that we will see is how do we reach Krishna Loka. So that is what I will cover today. Let's start with which verse Srila Prabhupada is referring to. If you just forgot, The purport Prabhupada is writing that in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we are informed that those who are expert in fruitive activities and sacrificial methods on earth attend to the moon at death. Let's see which verse Prabhupada is referring to. The verse that Prabhupada is referring to in Srimad Bhagavatam, the chapter is entitled as Entanglement in Fruitive Activities. So how, when all of us ignorantly or obliviously we are engaged in fruitive activities, how we get entangled? And this chapter is spoken by Kapila Muni to his mother Devahuti. It is 3rd canto, 32nd chapter. Let's see the verse. Tatshraddhaya akrantamatihi pitr deva bratah puman gatva chandramasam lokam somapah punareshyati. Very beautiful verse. So the word chandramasam is used again here. So this is coming from Kapila Muni's instruction to Mother Devahuti. And the translation of this is, such materialistic persons attracted by sense gratification and devoted to the forefathers and demigods can be elevated to the moon, where they drink an extract of the soma plant. They again return to this planet. This is the verse which is spoken by Kapila Muni, very interesting verse. So he's telling that, he's giving a descriptions of people who get elevated to the moon planet and what they do there, where they drink an extract of the soma plant and they again return to this planet. Let's hear the purport before we dive deeper into this. Prabhupada is writing in the purport that the moon is considered one of the planets of the heavenly kingdom. I was talking about coming to this material. In the material planet itself, if somebody wants to come to America or UK, it's not easy. Moon is considered to be one of the heavenly planets. It's situated above us. One can be promoted to this planet by executing different sacrifices recommended in the Vedic literature, such as pious activities in worshipping the demigods and forefathers with rigidity and vows. But one cannot remain there for a long time, very long time. This is what is the caveat. Life on the moon is said to last for 10,000 years, according to the calculation of the demigods. And the demigods' time is calculated in such a way that one day is equal to 6 months on this planet. So this calculation of the life in moon planet is even more than the heavenly planet. The devatas don't live for 10,000 years. Here this is moon planet, they are living for 10,000 years. Life on the moon planet is said to last for 10,000 years, according to the calculation of the demigods. And the one day of demigods is, the 12 hours is 6 months for us. We have seen this earlier, we had done this exercise. It is not possible to reach the moon by any material vehicle like a Sputnik, but persons who are attracted by material enjoyment can go to the moon by pious activities. In spite of being promoted to the moon, however, one has to come back to this earth again when the merits of his works in sacrifice are finished. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9.21. Te tam bhuktva swarga lokam vishalam kshine punye martya lokam vishanti. Kshine punye martya lokam vishanti. Imagine sometimes we make a trip which is a round trip. We have a return ticket. And sometimes we make a trip which is one way. Right? Usually our death should be such that we just take an exit ticket and we just go. It's just one way. It should not be a return ticket. Actually, elevating to planets like moon or heavenly planets comes with a return ticket. Tetam bhuktva swarga lokam vishalam kshine punye martya lokam vishanti. You may go there and enjoy for a long time, drinking somarasa for 10,000 years. One day of those 10,000 years is equivalent to 6 months of humanly calculation. But kshine punye martya lokam vishanti. You will again come down to this material world. Very interestingly, in this verse, Prabhupada is talking about who is the one who is getting elevated to moon planet. Who's the one? So in the translation, it is mentioned, such materialistic persons attracted by sense gratification and devoted to the forefathers and demigods. There are two things which are mentioned. First is they are materialistic persons and they are attracted by sense gratification and devoted to forefathers, can be elevated to the moon. So this is our point of discussion today. We will see who are these materialistic persons and why they get elevated to moon planet, and the reason which Prabhupada is mentioning is, or Kapila Muni is telling, attracted by sense gratification and devoted to forefathers and demigods can be elevated to the moon. Now, when we use this word materialistic persons, it is also important to define who is a materialistic person, who is a karmi. Mind you, I told you this chapter is entitled as Entanglement in Fruitive Activities. And actually our scriptures are very systematic. Only we don't see them in a systematic way, so we get confused. Kapila Muni, before telling this verse, who is getting elevated to moon planet, he is telling who are these materialistic persons. In the previous verse, he says, who is a materialistic person? That is the third thing that we are going to look. So we saw the verse that Prabhupada is referring to, and we saw who is getting elevated to moon planet. These are materialistic people who are attracted to sense gratification and who are worshipping the demigods and the forefathers. Now the question is, who is this materialistic person? So that is mentioned in the previous verse of this. This is the third verse. So in the first and second verse, it is mentioned who are these materialistic people. The personality of Godhead said, this is Kapila Muni who is saying, the person who lives in the center of household life derives material benefits by performing religious rituals, and thereby he fulfills his desire for economic development and sense gratification. Again and again he acts in the same way. Such persons are ever bereft of devotional service due to being too attached to sense gratification, and therefore although they perform various kinds of sacrifices and take great vows to satisfy the demigods and forefathers, they are not interested in Krishna consciousness devotional service. They are otherwise known as Grihamedhis. They actually worship the demigods very nicely, very ritually. They do all these kind of rituals. Why? Because they want to gratify their senses. Their whole life is, the center of their life is, the center of the household life derives by material benefits. Their center of the household life is not devotional activities. So they perform religious rituals and thereby they fulfill their desires for economic development and sense gratification. Such persons are ever bereft of devotional service due to being too attached to sense gratification. And therefore, although they perform various kinds of sacrifices and take great vows to satisfy the demigods and forefathers, they are not interested in Krishna consciousness devotional service. Very important verses these are. And often also in our life when somebody questions us why we should not be engaging in devotional, why we should not be engaging in sense gratification, or why we should not be worshipping demigods, we get confused. And if you really want to know an answer, of course Bhagavad Gita has got many verses. One of the verses which says is Kames taister hritagyana prapadyante anya devataha. Kames taister hritagyana. Overpowered by lust or the desire to enjoy these senses, hritagyana, when their jnana is stolen, prapadyante anya devata. They surrender to other demigods. Usually when we have some new people who come to Krishna consciousness, they always have these questions, isn't it worshipping Kali by sacrificing a goat same as worshipping Krishna with something else? Won't you get the same benefits? In the purport of this verse, if you want to see, go back and see 333.2. In this verse, in the purport, Prabhupada writes, this is first class rascaldom. It is not the same. In one case, people whose intelligence are stolen, kames taiste hritagyana prapadyante anya devataha. In the same 7th chapter, there is another verse which says, bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyante. To worship or to surrender to Krishna is done by a person who is jnanavan. Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyante. Whereas here, kames taiste hritagyana, who is overpowered by lust and the desire to enjoy this material world, his knowledge is stolen. That is why he is surrendering to demigods. It's not the same. And worshipping Kali by sacrificing a goat and worshipping Krishna by offering foodstuff, which is in like sattvic or in the mode of goodness, patram pushpam phalam toim, is not the same. The benefits are different. So this verse, text 2, actually is a very beautiful verse. The verse goes like this: Sachapi Bhagavad Dharmat Kama Mudha Paran Mukhaha Yajate Kratubhir Devan Pitrimscha Shraddhayanvitaha. And the translation is, such persons are ever bereft of devotional service due to being too attached to sense gratification, and therefore although they perform various kinds of sacrifices and take great vows to satisfy the demigods and forefathers, they are not interested in Krishna consciousness, devotional service. This particular aspect is highlighted in second chapter of Bhagavad Gita also, where Krishna says, Bhogeshwarya prasaktanam taya aparhata chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhir samadho na vidhiyate. Bhoga Aishwarya. If somebody is too attached to this Bhoga and Aishwarya, enjoyment and opulence, Bhogeshwarya prasaktanam, the branches of his intelligence becomes many branched. Bhogeshwarya prasaktanam taya aparhata chetasam, their intelligence gets stolen. And when the intelligence is stolen, taya aparhata is to kidnap. The intelligence is stolen by Maya Devi. Taya vyavasayatmika buddhi samadho na vidhiyate. Resolute determination to engage in devotional service doesn't come. What is the problem? What is the problem if somebody is not engaging in devotional service and going after sense gratification? We have done this many times, but let's see. There are two words which are used here by Kapila Muni. One is called Kama Mudhaha. The other one is Paranmukhaha. Very interesting word. This word Kama Mudha is translated by Prabhupada as infatuated by lust. He is absorbed, he is soaked, his mind is soaked, imbued, deeply absorbed in enjoyment. Kama Mudhaha. But the word is Mudha. Paranmukha. He is turned his face away from Krishna. Parakmukha, having the face turned away. This word Paranmukha is also found mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And the verse goes like this: Krishna bhuli se jiva anadi bahirmukha ateva maya tare diye samsara dukkha. When we forget Krishna, when we forget that we have an eternal relationship with the Lord, when we forget that we are spirit soul and the Lord is also eternal super soul and we have eternal relationship with him, we turn towards this Maya Devi and we try to enjoy in this material world, but Maya gives samsara dukkha. Krishna bhuli sai jiva anadi bahirmukha. From time immemorial, we've forgotten about this. And we are trying to enjoy in this. Ateva maya tarade samsara dukkha. The ateva is hence. Since we have forgotten Krishna, Krishna bhuli sai jiva anadi bahirmukha. Bahirmukha is to turn your face away from Krishna. Ateva maya tarade samsara dukkha. Forgetting Krishna, the living entity has been attracted by the external feature from time immemorial. Therefore, the illusory energy, Maya, gives him all kinds of misery in his material existence. So what is the solution? So there is this word that is used here is Bahirmukha, but if somebody becomes Krishnonmukha, if he turns his face towards Krishna, then Sai Jiva Nistare Maya Tahare Chadaye. How does a person becomes Krishnonmukha? From Bahirmukha to Krishnonmukha, how does it happen? Sadhu Sastra Kripaye Yadi Krishnonmukha hai Sai Jiva Nistare Maya Tahare Chadaye. Sadhu Sastra Kripaye. You need the mercy of both sadhus as well as Sastra. Because any activity that we do is based on the perception or the understanding that we have about this world. We have certain knowledge about this material world, and that is why we are doing different activities. That knowledge needs to change. That perception that we have has to change. And the change of perception happens by the mercy of sadhu and by the mercy of Sastra. Sastra is not just having the book with us. This Sastra has to be revealed in our heart. Divya Gyan Hriday Prakasito. It's a very difficult thing. People take up to Krishna consciousness. They want to understand, but they miss out on some of the very key aspects of Krishna consciousness, and hence they struggle. So you need mercy of sadhu, and also you need mercy of Sastra. Sadhu Sastra Kripaye, the face which is turned this side, will be turned this side towards Krishna. Krishnonmukha hai. And the moment somebody turns towards Krishna, Sai Jiva Nistare, then the Maya releases him. Maya Tahare Chadaye. If the conditioned soul becomes Krishna conscious by the mercy of saintly persons who voluntarily preach scriptural injunctions and help him to become Krishna conscious, the conditioned soul is liberated from the clutches of Maya, who gives him up. There is a similar verse also found mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the two words Krishna Bahirmukha and Krishnanmukha are there in the same verse. Krishna Bahirmukha dose Maya haite bhaya. Krishnonmukha bhakti haite Maya mukta hai. So when somebody is Krishna Bahirmukha, he is always fearful. Krishna Bahirmukhe dose Maya hoite bhaya. Maya Devi is so much, it is tormenting us. We are always fearful of our existence here. What will happen if my job is gone, if my husband is gone, if my parents are gone, if the shelter that I have is gone, if all those kinds of fears come. Krishna Bahirmukha dose Maya hoite bhaya. Krishna Unmukhe bhakti hoite Maya mukta hai. The moment we engage in devotional service, we become free from these fears, this Maya mukta hai. The verse which comes in Srimad Bhagavatam, what is that? 1.7.6. The next one. The Soka Moha Bhayapaha. What is that verse? Huh? Soka Moha Bhayapaha. Yashyam vai Shruyamanayam. Very good. Yashyam vai Shruyamanayam Krishne Paramapurushe Bhaktir Utpadyate Pumsaha Soka Moha Bhayapaha. Yashyam vai Shruyamanayam. If we just become fortunate to get a chance to hear in association of devotees about the instructions which Krishna has left behind. Yashyan vai Shruyamanayam. Just by giving oral receptions. Krishne Paramapurushe Bhaktir Utpadyate Pumsa. In our heart, bhakti sprouts. Because Anadi Bahirmukha, from time immemorial, we've turned our face away. And we are struggling. We are going through this repeated cycle of birth and death. Anadi Bahirmukha. So it's very difficult. So, but if Yashyam vai Shruyamanayam, if we hear about Krishna, Paramapurushe, Yashyam vai Shruyamanayam, Krishne Paramapurushe, Bhakti Utpadyate Pumsa. In our heart, bhakti sprouts. And when bhakti sprouts, Yashyam vai Shruyamanayam, Krishne Paramapurushe, Bhakti Utpadyate Pumsa, Soka Moha Bhayapaha. Then Soka, lamentation, Bhaya, fear, and Moha. Soka is for the previous thing in the past that we could not achieve. Lamentation for things that I could have got, I couldn't get. Moha is for the present thing. I'm illusioned, I'm thinking this is going to give me happiness. And Bhaya is for the future. Soka Moha Bhayapaha. All these things, three things will be removed. So the translation is, by opposing Krishna consciousness, one becomes conditioned and fearful due to the influence of Maya. By executing devotional service faithfully, one is liberated from Maya. So that is very important. Why, how a person, when he is Krishnonmukha and Krishna Bahirmukha, when he turns his face towards Krishna, how things change in life. The next thing that I want to talk about is, how do we reach Krishna Loka? This is a very important thing, because you are reaching to like moon planet, you are reaching to some other place, and when the soul traverses this journey, he is actually shown all these material planets. And if one is not very convinced about reaching Krishna Loka, then he may end up in some moon planet or some other higher planets, maybe Brahma Loka as Brahma, and live there for long time, very long time, and you feel that you are in control and enjoying more, but then again you come down. Kshine Punya Martya Lokam Vishanti. So it is very important to know how we can reach Krishna Loka. Before we go there, let's understand the one thing which I didn't cover, that is the sense gratification business. Why it is wrong and what is wrong with this. There are few strong arguments and we should repeatedly hear them. We should meditate, we should contemplate upon those things. These two verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Prabhupada was asked by a reporter as to, can you summarize the philosophy of yours in one verse? Prabhupada said it cannot be done in one verse, but here are two verses. And the first verse is this one, and there 1.2.9 and 1.2.10. The verse goes like this: Dharmasya hi apavargasya nartho arthayo upakalpate narthasya dharmaikantasya kamo labhaya hi sprataha. Very beautiful verse, very, very nice verse, very wonderful explanation by Prabhupada. Such a genius, actually. Sometimes the compassion of a pure devotee also we can't understand, we can't fathom, because we are so caught up with our own concept of living, with our own ideas of enjoying this material world. These things don't strike, they don't penetrate our outer layer. It has to penetrate our outer layer and go inside. Then the transformation happens. The transformation comes in the form of action. Nobody has to come and tell you, why don't you do some devotional service, it is good for you. You will feel inspired, let me do it. My God, what am I doing? How many lifetimes have gone? Anadi Bahirmukha. This is time for getting up. Jeev Jago. Enough we have slept. So this verses like this, it actually gives us that shock, or kind of, it makes us awake. Dharmasya hi apavargasya. He, the word he is very important in Sanskrit, and it means certainly. So there are 2 times it is used. Dharmasya hi apavargasya nartho arthaya upakalpate. Narthasya dharmaikantasya kamo labhaya hi smrita. Dharma is meant for apavarga. Pavarga is this material world. Dharma is certainly the highest occupational duty, is meant for elevating, for liberating us from this material world. It is not meant for doing some religious activities, is not meant to be performed for sense gratification or for economic development. No, no, no. Dharmasya hi apavargasya nartho arthaya upakalpate. Na artha upakalpate. Never use dharma for achieving, for getting some economic benefits, economic gain. Dharmasya hi apavargasya nartho arthaya upakalpate. Narthasya dharmaikantasya kamo labhaya hi smrita. And economic development should not be used for sense gratification. Who is telling this? Smritaha. Smritaha is great sages. So the translation is, all occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Dharmasya hi apavargasya nartho arthaya upakalpate. There are 2 times na is used. Na artha upakalpate. Don't use dharma for artha upakalpate. And narthasya dharmaikantasya. Artha should not be used for kama labhaya, for sense gratification. Who is telling this? Smritaha, the great sages. And then it is followed by kamasya nendriya pritir labho jiveta yavata jivasya tattva jigyasa nartho yascheha karma bhi. Life's desire should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. We all know this verse. These are very important words. Read the purport. Very, very beautifully Prabhupada explains these things. Because when the first time we hear, it appears as a shock. अरे मैं काम कर रहा हूँ, थोड़ा रिलीजियस भी हूँ, आके भगवान को प्रे कर रहा हूँ, और थोड़ा पैसा वैसा अगर मांग लिया, क्या खराबी है? एंड जो पैसा मिल रहा है, आई विल यूज़ इट फॉर माई सेंस ग्रेटिफिकेशन. सबका जो भी डिज़ायर्स है वो फुलफिल करूँगा. यही तो लाइफ है. आई मीन, दिस इज व्हाट वी हैव बीन टॉट. But why these people are saying it is not good? Let's analyze little more further. There is a very okay. Let's. I have put this example. How many of you love gulab jamuns? Gulab jamuns keep coming in the slide somehow. I just. How many of you love gulab jamuns? Okay, Badri is raising hands. All of you probably. Okay, imagine Jagannath Prabhu. Let's take Jagannath Prabhu's example. Very hungry, and we have just made gulab jamuns only. Okay, it's a big bowl of gulab jamuns, or big vessel filled with gulab jamuns. लाके रख दिया उनके सामने, and he is told that you don't have anything else to eat. You eat gulab jamuns today. So एक डाला, क्या लगता है प्रभु गुलाब जामुन क्या बनाए? Appreciating nicely. So poor fellow, he doesn't know that there is no other item today. And then one, after that, Badri Prabhu puts one gulab jamun in his mouth. Then Shrey comes, he puts one more. And we keep doing this. Throughout the day, he's sitting there. Maybe imagine, he's tied to the chair with some duct tapes or something. So he can't move. And mouth is also kept open. Gulab jamun is going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can give break also. But when the moment he opens, again, 1, 2, 3, 4. What do you think will happen to him? What will happen to you? अरे तो गुलाब जामुन में तो मज़ा है ना, तो हम तो वही तो गुलाब जामुन दे रहे हैं आपको. See, this is something which we should remember, or which should understand. If there is really happiness in sense gratification, if I go on doing that, it should have given me increased sense gratification, increased happiness. But it is not. Imagine somebody says, I love this music, bro. This music just takes me to a different planet. Very good. Okay, sit down here, tie him again, duct tape. Put this thing earphone, keep playing that continuously. सुनो कितना सुनना है, सुनते रहो गाने को, सुनते रहो, सुनते रहो. After even one day, maybe he'll get mad, saying that what's going on? Why it is like this? Imagine if you have $1 bill with you and somebody gives you another $2, you can buy more things. So it is working. Like if you have $2, you can do more things. It is not true here in case of sense gratification because it's a myth. We live a life thinking that there is happiness in sense gratification. You are not convinced. Read Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, 22nd verse, 18th chapter, 32nd verse. Yehi sansparsaja bhoga dukkha yenaya evate te adi antavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. People who are intelligent, they know it is a source of misery. They don't indulge. People like us who are conditioned, who are foolish, who are bahirmukha, we think that there is happiness in this material world. 18.32, very beautifully Krishna says, it appears nectar at the beginning, but when you go, you chase this and you do this, you realize this is poison. Another very great example, very nice example, that is the example of Saubhari Muni. Right? We all know this story, how he was meditating inside the river so that his mind is fixed, doesn't get attracted to any distractions in this material world, no temptations. He was seated inside the river Yamuna, and he saw out of all the living entities, two fishes were mating. Imagine, it is not like some mammals or not even animals, two fishes mating. And his mind got so agitated, he went and married 50 daughters of Mandhata, 50 daughters. That means he would have had a lot of sense gratification. Same thing which I am telling the example, like you keep eating or you keep hearing, you keep enjoying sex life. Maybe, that will give happiness. Let's see what Saubhari Muni says after he indulged in this, what happened. Evam griheshu abhirato vishayan vividhai sukhai sevamano na chatushyad ajyastoke rivanalaha. So this word visha and vishaya are very similar. Vishaya is the material sense gratification and visha is poison. They're similar. Because visha is separating the soul from the body, vishaya is separating the soul from the Lord. Vishaya, if somebody gets mad in this vishaya, that's it, over, Lord and all, where is it? You are gone. What happened to Saubhari Muni when he got indulged in this? He's telling, Evam griheshu abhirato. Abhirato is, he got completely immersed with this 50 wives. He had a very wonderful life, enjoying sex life and all. Vishayan bibidhai sukhai, and he was enjoying that sense gratification. Sevamano no chatushyad ajyastoke rivanalaha, but he was not satisfied. This is the thing. You can never be satisfied no matter how much you indulge in sense gratification. Ajyastoke rivanalaha, like a fire which continuously burns, never gets satiated or satisfied by putting some butter or ghee in it. Similarly, chasing after sense gratification can never give us the satisfaction. Very interesting translation. In this way, Saubhari Muni enjoyed sense gratification in the material world, but he was not at all satisfied. Just as a fire never ceases blazing if constantly supplied with drops of fat. Ajyastokehi, by drops of fat. This is what is the problem, and we keep doing this lifetime after lifetime, thinking that we will be satisfied. But as it is mentioned, if you are too attached to sense gratification and you are worshipping demigods, you will end up to going to some moon planet, and again when the punya is over, again you will come down to this. There is a beautiful purport which Prabhupada explains a little bit about why we don't get satisfied with this. Let's hear the purport. Material desire is just like a blazing fire. If a fire is continually supplied with drops of fat, the fire will increase more and more, never to be extinguished. Therefore, the policy of trying to satisfy material desires by catering to one's material demands will never be successful. In modern civilization, everyone is engaged in economic development, which is another way of constantly dropping fat into the material fire. The Western countries have reached the summit of material civilization, but people are still dissatisfied. Real satisfaction is Krishna consciousness. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 5.29, where Krishna says, Bhoktaram yajnatapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam santim archati. This verse Prabhupada says is the peace formula. The sages who know me as the ultimate purpose of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. One must therefore take to Krishna consciousness and advance in Krishna consciousness by properly following the regulative principles. Then one can attain an eternal blissful life in peace and knowledge. This is what the human life is meant for. This is how we can actually get the real happiness and satisfaction. Because we are just trying to satisfy this body and the bodily demands, which is a gross covering, or at the max our subtle body's demands. But we are not understanding that this is superficial to us. The needs of the soul is very different. And when we actually give happiness to the soul, when we satisfy the demands of the soul, we feel ultimate happiness. And how do you get that? Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radhokshaje ahetuki apratihata yenatma suprasidhati. Yenatma, this atma gets suprasidhati, completely satisfied when we engage in devotional service to the Lord. Savai pumsam, that is why this is the highest occupational duty, to engage in the service of the Lord, and that service also has to be ahetuki and apratihata. It has to be causeless. There is no business transaction here. Oh Lord, remember that I have done this for you. You should pay back when time comes to me. No. Ahetuki. This is what I am meant to. I don't have a separate existence other than, serving the Lord, being His part. Like this hand, if it is cut from my hand, from my body and lying somewhere, the hand has no existence. Similarly, we don't have any independent existence. So when we actually engage in devotional service, ahetuki, without expecting anything, and apratihata, unfailingly, uninterruptedly, yenatma suprasidhati, we can actually experience the satisfaction. Still, we didn't cover how we can go to Krishna Loka. And that is very nicely mentioned in Bhagavad Gita towards the end, 18th chapter, 68th verse. After having spoken all the confidential instructions, Krishna says, Yeidam paramam guhyam mad bhakteshu avidhasyati bhaktim mai param kratva mam mebeshyati asamshaya. The verse that we just spoke, the verse which Prabhupada is quoting? Yeah, this verse, if you see, it says, Soma paha punar eshyati. The word eshyati is used. He will return. And in this verse of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling, Mam eveshyati asamshaya. Eshyati is there here also. But you will come to me. So, yaidam paramam guhyam mat bhakteshu avidhasyati bhaktim maik param kratva mam eveshyati asamsaya. You see how many adjectives Krishna is using. Asamsaya. Asamsaya is without doubt. You will come to me. Mam eve. Eva. Eva is certainly. Eshyati. You will come to me without doubt, certainly. If you do this thing, what you have to do? Bhakti mai param kritva. If you engage in my devotional service, you will come back to me. Let's see the translation. For one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed. And at the end, he will come back to me. We may find this process of explaining Krishna conscious philosophy to others very challenging. It's not easy because people either are not interested or they reject our philosophies. But it is, Krishna is telling, who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed. Pure devotional service is guaranteed. And if you have pure devotional service, then at the end you will come back to me. Very interesting purport, very small purport, but there is something very powerful which Prabhupada reveals in the purport. Generally, it is advised that Bhagavad Gita be discussed amongst the devotees, because here it is mentioned, Yaidam paramam guhyam mat bhakteshu avidhasyati. For one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, right? We are supposed to explain it to devotees who are interested in Krishna consciousness. If we do that, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end he will come back to me. So that is what Prabhupada is starting to write in the purport. Generally, it is advised that Bhagavad Gita be discussed among the devotees only. For those who are not devotees will understand neither Krishna nor Bhagavad Gita. Those who do not accept Krishna as he is and Bhagavad Gita as it is should not try to explain Bhagavad Gita whimsically and become offenders. Bhagavad Gita should be explained to persons who are ready to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is a subject matter for the devotees only and not for philosophical speculators. Now pay attention. Anyone, however, who tries sincerely to present Bhagavad Gita as it is, will advance in devotional activities and reach the pure devotional state of life. As a result of such pure devotion, he's sure to go back home, back to Godhead. This is the secret. This is the most important thing. It is meant to be discussed amongst the devotees. One has to explain this secret to the devotees, but he's telling anyone, however, who tries sincerely. If somebody is trying sincerely to present Bhagavad Gita as it is, as Prabhupada, as Krishna has spoken, he will advance in devotional activities and reach the pure devotional state of life. And as a result of such pure devotional, as a result of such pure devotion, he is sure to go back home, back to Godhead. So these are some of the important points that we discussed from this verse. So we saw the verse which Prabhupada is referring to in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is from the third canto, which is third canto, 32nd chapter, which is entitled as Entanglement in Fruitive Activities. And we saw how somebody who's too attached to sense gratification and is busy engaging in worship of demigods and forefathers reaches the moon planet, stays there, enjoys with Somarasa and things like that for 10,000 years of demigods calculation, but again, Kshine Punya Martya Lokam Vishanti, he falls down. Who gets elevated to moon planet? Those two things I mentioned, attached to sense gratification and worshipping these things. Who is a materialistic person? Prabhupada gives the definition of who is a materialistic person, the first two verses of this. And we saw that one of the characteristic of the materialistic person is his Krishna Bahirmukha. And because he is Krishna Bahirmukha, he is experiencing so many material tribulations and the trials and the miseries. But how does he turn towards Krishna? By sadhu kripa and by sastra kripa. By the mercy of sadhu, by the mercy of devotees, and by the mercy of scriptures. If the scriptures, they reveal themselves to us, then there is a hope that I will turn towards Krishna. And when somebody turns towards Krishna, he'll immediately become free from all fears. Otherwise there is constant fear inside, because we are away from Krishna, we have turned our face away from Krishna. And how do we reach Krishna Loka? Before that we also spoke about what is wrong with sense gratification. We took the example of Saubhari Muni and saw that how despite marrying 50 women, he was not satisfied. And how Prabhupada is saying materialistic desires, they keep coming in our heart because of the incorrect understanding or perception about our life. We think this is how we are supposed to enjoy, but when we try to satisfy these desires, instead of getting satisfied, they burn again and again. They come with a double intensity. So what should we do? What is the way forward? How can we come out of this? The thing which Krishna says is, if somebody explains this secret to devotees, then he will achieve pure devotional service. And when somebody achieves pure devotional service, that qualifies him to come to his loka, mam evaishyasi. He will come back to him asamshaya, without doubt. Not easy. Attaining the Supreme is not easy. But here is a chance which is given. If you are explaining this secret of this entanglement that one is having in this material world and the way out of it, if you are explaining this sincerely, then you can achieve the pure devotional platform. And if you come to pure devotional platform, then you can get liberation. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions or comments. Any question online?
So, in this verse, Prabhupada was mentioning about forefathers or moon planet.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's mentioned as heavenly.
Mm-hmm.
So forefathers planets are actually Pitra Lokas, right?
Correct.
So Pitra Lokas are the lowest planetary system. So how can it be referred to as heavenly planets as moon planet or the forefathers?
But the planets it's not like if it is lower planetary system, there is no enjoyment there. The enjoyment is still there. It's not like the Pitraloka doesn't have avenues for enjoyment. Actually, the enjoyment is very high. Both, whether you go up or down. Sometimes we think if you are going down, it's only going to be miserable. That's, that's not true. Bali Maharaj, the description which is given in the lower planetary system, there's a lot of opulence is there. Only difference is when you go down, surrender to Lord doesn't come naturally, because the asuric prabhutis are more. They don't consult Lord, or they are not. They're not. Any problems they have, they do things on their own. Yasastra vidhim utsrijya vartate kamakaratah nasa siddhim avapnoti na sukham na paramgatim. So they do as per they don't follow any Vedic injunctions. Whereas all the demigods, any problems they have, they go and surrender to Krishna. They are devotees, but they are sakama bhakta. But these are not devotees. But doesn't mean that they don't have any source of material enjoyment. They have. Only planet Earth is one place which is, just optimum for someone to realize Krishna, because you don't have a long lifespan. At the same time, the perception or the actual feelings of this material distress, one can actually experience this very easily. But in other planetary systems, since there are more sources of enjoyment, more avenues are there, you're forgetful of your miseries. You don't realize that. Like in moon planet or higher planetary systems, you're living for a long period of time with Somarasa and all, nicely everything is going on. Where is the question for thinking about Krishna? It's not like it is impossible, but it is difficult. But in planet Earth, because you are getting little experience of sense gratification, but also along with that the slaps of Maya, it makes it very nice for someone to realize Krishna easily. And on top of that, Kali Yuga is even more, I would say, is a big blessing. If somebody comes in touch with a pure devotee, Kali Yuga is actually a big blessing. Because God realization is very easy. Only reason is because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared. And most merciful. And he is giving, just chant Hare Krishna and go back. So if we just do that and follow it very strictly, that's it. It will work. But it is not easy to chant Hare Krishna. That's the problem. Though the process is simple, but chanting Hare Krishna is not simple. It's very difficult because mind gives so crazy ideas. That is why the Shastras are there. We should understand the importance of chanting Hare Krishna. We should understand how chanting Hare Krishna is non-different from the Lord himself. And the Nama Prabhu can reciprocate with us based on our individual sincerity and surrender. So when we realize this and when we actually put genuine efforts, we make progress. But when we don't do that, when chanting becomes a burden, it is a mechanical thing, somehow we just finish it, drag it, then we don't make the progress that we should have made. Of course, there will be progress because we are chanting, but it will not be as accelerated as it should have been. We are like Aswathama who doesn't know how to use this. He didn't know how to return. Exactly. Yeah. So we are doing so many flaws and mistakes, and we are not even mindful of them. We are very oblivious to those. Yeah. Does it mean that when do devotional service and be a good devotee, but a person passes away in Dakshinayinam time, they won't go to? Very good. Actually, this fear is not valid, because in the next verse, Krishna will talk about it. These are all, so this chapter, he's talking about the chakras that one has, and how by controlling the air in your in between your eyebrows, and finally, the yogis, they rupture the skull, and when it goes, then it reaches the supreme destination. He's talking from that point of view. So if somebody thinks that, I did devotional service, sab kuch kiya, raat ko mar gaya, Dakshinayan mein mar gaya, then what will happen? I'll go to moon planet or what? Krishna says in the next verse, actually, very beautiful verse. It will come in the next class. I didn't go there. Naite shriti partha janan yogi muhyati kaschana tasmat sarveshu kaleshu yogi yukta bhavarjuna. The devotee who knows these two paths, O Arjuna, are never bewildered. Therefore, be always fixed in devotion. Krishna's advice is, don't worry about this time and all. Just yoga yukta bhavarjuna. Just be yoga yukta. Just engage in this fixed devotion, Because somebody who's engaged in fixed devotion is exempt. He's free. He's beyond these things. But yoga yukta, you have to be always engaged in devotion. If that is not happening, then forget about it. Does that answer? Thank you. Any other question? Actually, Bhagavad Gita is so wonderful. I mean, if somebody just spends time and sees how Krishna is revealing these things, because this is the summary of the entire Vedic literature, right? The entire thing is summarized in that battlefield in just 45 minutes. So you can't ask for anything better than this. Other things are so elaborate, so vast, it is very difficult to even comprehend, fathom, and go through. Vedanta Sutra is very cryptic. They're short aphorisms. Unless we read some explanations and commentary, we can't understand. Bhagavad Gita is one book which has got everything. Everything is there. And very nicely, Krishna is unfolding these things. If we just pay attention, if we are just sincere and try to understand what's happening, what's going on, then we will make very, very assured way we will make progress. Very convinced way we will make progress. There will not be any doubts inside us. I was talking about that Adhyagya, Adhibhuta and Adhyatma. I'll talk about it in some other class, some other time. Very powerful, very nicely Krishna has brought this thing. And that is how that Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam is such an important thing. Why the consciousness at the time of death is so important. They say that, somebody may think that I will live life the way I want to. At the time of death, I will remember Krishna. It's not going to happen. It's impossible. Because there was a question which was asked once in Chanchalpati Prabhu's night association. With that, we will close. Somebody said, what if I take a gun and shoot myself, and before shooting I say Krishna? And so I'm done. Yam Yam Vapi, Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yati nasti atra samshaya. Right? Ho gaya. So I've killed myself. Krishna bhi bol diya, ho gaya. Then I'll go back to Krishna. No, simple. Everybody should do this. ठीक है, थोड़ा pain है, जो भी है. Anyway, we have to die. If you have understood that, let's finish our life by chanting Krishna, by just remembering the name. Prabhu said, actually what happens is, even if you have shot yourself, you don't die immediately. There are few seconds which is there before you actually die. And in those few seconds, even if you have said Krishna before that, those thoughts will not come. The point is, it is not like we can cheat the Lord. It's not possible. That is why if we are throughout our life, if we are engaged in devotional service, genuinely having understood this, engaged in devotional service, at the time of death, we will remember. 100% remember. Attaining the Supreme is not easy. Coming to US and UK was not easy. If you think you have to go to the Supreme planet, it's not going to be easy. But at the same time, the process is given to us. Engaging in devotional service. Nicely engaging in devotional service. Starting with the chanting the names of the Lord in Kali Yuga, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's biggest mercy. If we do that sincerely, everything will be revealed to us. Everything will manifest in our heart. Right, if there is no question, we'll stop here. Granthra Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai